Yeah, we're a couple of minutes past 6. So what I'd like to do is um, just a couple of introductions to everybody, like who I am. Tonight's Let's Talk subject. My name is Liz Gray. I am the neighborhood quality consultant for Oakland Planning and Development Corporation. Okay, I've been working with them for about 5 years, and I track trash, which is the subject tonight. We have from DPW, Chris Mitchell. Chris, you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your position?
Sure. My name is Chris Mitchell. I'm the anti-litter specialist for the City of Pittsburgh Department of Public Works and Environmental Services. I mostly study our trash problems here in Pittsburgh, how they manifest in different places. I'm not super concerned with the national trash problems. I'm really concerned about what we're dealing with right here. So it's mostly programs, coming up with solutions, talking to everybody, learning what everybody's dealing with, and trying to find there's no holistic approach to trash. It's 1,000 problems all stacked on top of each other, but we want solutions for each of those 1,000 problems. So that's how we approach all this.
Okay. And Matt Landy, if you would introduce yourself and give a little background.
Sure. My name is Matt Landy. I am the Director of Student Conduct at Pitt. So, I'm here to listen. I'm here to understand, right? Or have you help me understand some of the issues that we have, including trash, right? And work to resolve those and really hearing more about the programming that's already in place and how the university can support the city, but also maybe there's some things that we can do on our own. Education of students and landlords, right? Making sure that everybody's educated. And then teasing, how do we respond? How do we report these kinds of issues? And then our response to them. So gaining a lot of knowledge and insights from you all will be invaluable.
Okay. And Sam, could I ask you to give a little blurb on the Adopt a Block program?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, everyone. I can start my video for a second, so I'm less of a logo and more of a human. Hey, everyone. My name is Sam. I am one of the community engagement specialists on staff at OPDC. One of the things I help do is manage our Adopt a Block program. Adopt a Block is an effort to get students volunteering to keep their eyes on the street and clean up trash on a pretty regular and ongoing basis. So we have about 17 blocks that we've mapped out across Oakland, and student organizations typically sign up to adopt one of those blocks during their semester. We just had a kickoff meeting last week. But the idea is they start adopting a block, and then on a monthly or semi-monthly basis, they agree to maintain that block and do trash cleanup. On an ongoing basis, we provide all the things that you would need, but I'm the person that they contact for bag pickups, or if they run into trouble or anything like that. They also sign waivers with me, all of that good stuff. Yeah.
Thank you, Sam.
Sure.
I'm going to explain a little bit more about what I do. You probably see me driving around the neighborhood, taking pictures with my phone, which is just full of trash pictures. I work with the city, DPW, PLI on code enforcement within our community. Tonight, I spent 45 minutes on Chesterfield. And I wish I could say there was more than 2 houses on that street that didn't have an issue, but I can't. Throughout Oakland, we've been seeing an ever-growing issue with not just the trash, but it's a big problem with containment and an ever-growing problem with cardboard. From the pandemic, we've seen just Amazon, Walmart, food delivery, just all that kind of home delivery is generating what I call a tsunami of cardboard within our community. And when I am out and I do see students, I try to speak with them to, talk with them and say, hey, just try flattening the cardboard and sticking them all in one box. And then on recycling day, put it out and explain little finer points like, if it gets sopping wet, it cannot be recycled. That, recycling material needs to be clean. No, a pizza box cannot go into the recycling, that kind of thing. But at this point, I think we need to explore additional ideas, which is why Chris here tonight, and we need to get feedback from the community about what they're seeing on their street, in their neighborhood. So on that note, I would say if anybody has any questions for Matt or Chris, get this rolling. Anyone?
Liz, I don't have a question, but can I offer a quick intro of our office as well?
Oh, Jamie, you're
just for folks that are not familiar on the call.
You're breaking
up.
No, you're kind of garbled.
Hi, everyone. Apologies for being
Jamie, I'm going to interrupt you because we can't understand what you're saying. You're all garbled. Okay, I don't know if you're on a phone or...
She's going to try. She might just be having poor reception, but she'll try back in a second.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, here we are.
Millie has her hand up.
Think I have bad service. So
okay, Jamie, we're going to go on to Millie because you're still breaking up. I'm sorry. Millie, you have a comment?
Yeah, I do. I guess I have been saying over the last several years that I really do feel that, and I'm sorry I'm late, so maybe you covered this before I came, but I've always felt that Pitt has some responsibility for their students that are our neighbors. We like our student neighbors, but every 9 months it's the same issue. And of course, yes, you're right. The cardboards just got out of hand, and the rules have changed too, Liz. I mean, you know, I read the rules, and my grandkids say, why do we have to put the lids in the regular garbage? Why can't we put them in? You know, so the rules are kind of tough to interpret too. But I'm going to come back to the same thing, and I'm sorry, all of the Pitt representatives here. I do believe that Pitt should have some kind of knock and talk with their students. They know where many of them live. I know not all of them, but during the pandemic, a lot of off-campus students did give them their addresses, so they know where they're. I'm not asking them to pick up after CMU students or Point Park students or my garbage, but they could cycle around our most desperate neighborhoods and talk to the kids. I certainly try to do that. I mean, even this week, I said to my tenant, "Oh, aren't you going to put your garbage out?" And she just walked by, and she said, "Oh, I thought they already went past." I said, "No. Look at your neighbors and see their garbage. It's still there. So yours hasn't been picked up. So pull it out to the curb, thank you." They just have no concept. They haven't been trained to live in this city, and it's all about training. And I know Pitt has done lots of outreach, but it's going to take knocking and talking like the police have done for us about disruptive parties and so forth. And I'm sorry, it's going to be going out on Monday night or Tuesday morning at awkward times, but I believe that Pitt owes us a private Oakland rubbish collection group. That's all. I'll say no more. I'll say it again someday, though.
We hope that you don't have to say it again, Millie, but you know, we do appreciate your feedback, and hopefully through sessions like this, we can work on this in a timely, efficient, and collaborative manner. So I appreciate it.
Matt, can I ask you, what kind of education do you guys do from Pitt for the off-campus students with regard to trash containment, recycling scheduling?
I might defer to Justin because I think that he works a little closer with those students who are moving off campus. Maybe I wish Jamie's sound was working, but we'll see if Justin can help us out.
Sure. Yeah. So, you know, Liz, I think you're familiar with some of the things that we've had a chance to do in the past. And so I can, you know, and as you all know that, you know, I've been coming in this summer. And so we do some of that education through the tenant town halls. And we do have some education that comes through student affairs, and, you know, in the form of, you know, the green team, and that's as far as educating and how people can dispose of waste and how people can recycle and what it looks like to recycle. Some of those things you mentioned was like the pizza boxes that can't be recycled and those type of things. And so there's that sort of dynamic when it comes to just educating our student population in general, and then the tenant town halls when it comes to educating our students that are going to be renting off campus or living off campus. And I do see that Trish does have a comment, and so I think she'd be able to add too, since she does work with our off-campus students.
Okay, Trish.
Hello, everyone. When I have students that come through with me, I explain that they need to discuss this with their landlord, when trash needs to go out, when trash, and they need to have this specified through the contract that you provided me, Liz, and it needs to be in the lease. And I say it's very highly important that you have this contract, Liz, that's in your lease to specify what time your garbage goes out. The contract that I am referring to, Liz gave me a contract a year back in a landlord-tenant meeting that this should be included in every lease to make sure students understand exactly where their garbage goes out, what time their garbage goes out, when to have the cans back in the next day. And it's very important, and it should be included in every lease that you sign, because if the trash isn't put back or put out by times, you're going to be fined. It's not going to be the landlord's fault. It's going to come back on the student.
Even if, okay. Chris, can you respond to that with regard to the landlord-tenant agreement that is part of legislation with the city, the one that they're supposed to be giving to all their tenants?
Sure. So I'm going to go ahead and just pop that in the chat. That is available on our pittsburghpa.gov website. This is something that we know people are supposed to be using. We don't know realistically how much they actually are using it. It's not something that we are able to verify out of environmental services or anything like that. Hopefully this is something that could be a little bit more heavily policed if the landlord registry through PLI gets off the ground.
Is there any level of enforcement with that agreement? Is there anything in the legislation that can actually help enforce it?
I do know it's not through environmental services if there is enforcement at all, but sometimes when it gets to some of our other departments, it gets a little confusing who's doing what, which is one of our biggest problems when it comes to trash. And what my biggest effort in the city is to consolidate a lot of those responsibilities away from all these myriad of departments. We've got them in DOMI and PLI and DPW and environmental services. And so, but as far as I know, nothing in our office is done to enforce that landlords are using this.
So, and Liz, to back Chris up here, there is nothing that is enforced to make sure that the agreement is in place. But this is something that we do see in court when a landlord comes in and says that my tenants are you know, crappy tenants and they throw the trash everywhere, that the judge can ask, and in many cases does ask, do you have you signed this agreement? Because that, you know, helps that end of the system say if this is a landlord problem or a tenant problem. So the on the back end, it's used but not necessarily enforced to make sure that it's in there. So.
Okay, I'm going to call another resident. Mary, I think you were next.
Am I muted? Yep, you can hear me?
Yes,
okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'll make it short. One thing that's really falling through the cracks is recycling day, that it's actually every other week. I mean, that's sort of, it's confusing for long-term residents, let alone students. But house after house after house has the recycling out for like an entire 2 weeks. And as Liz was pointing out, that destroys the recyclability of the materials in there. I understand the recommendations you were making here on the ground level. It just seems like, oh my goodness, at that point they're into eviction and, you know, I don't know how you communicate the information in a just-in-time basis, but it's sort of, it needs to be more immediate. One thing, this is just crazy brainstorming, and I don't mean to take up too much meeting with this, is maybe Pitt could get involved with having block or area captains. Perhaps work study students that would have a responsibility once a week. And honestly, this is a thing that you really only need to do for like 1, 2, 3 weeks in the beginning. They get it down, we're solid. To perhaps notice where the problems are and try to help our new residents with the information they may not have. The other thing I just sort of wanted to point out and complain about, or if something could be done, is the sanctity of the sidewalks for pedestrians. We went through an entire 2 weeks in Oakland there where you could not walk on the sidewalks. In between the move-ins, the move-outs, the cardboard, the furniture, the discarded plastic boxes from Target, the incoming plastic boxes from Target, can't walk, cannot walk. And a lot of us need to walk. You know, we need to be able to get around the neighborhood that way. And again, another thing, first 2 weeks, we could solve this problem. People get tickets, people get whatever. You're blocking the sidewalk. Please don't do that. Thanks.
Thank you, Mary.
Just a quick question to add to Mary's point. Is there, and I don't know if Bob or Chris can answer this, but is there an ADA concern about the sidewalks being blocked by trash for longer than they should be, right? That folks in a wheelchair or have mobility issues cannot get through, and what happens in those kinds of scenarios?
There's people with walkers too.
I've reported this to DOMI as blocked sidewalks. At the same time, when I'm 311ing the trash for being out as a late set out or an early set out, I am also putting in for blocked sidewalks to DOMI. I was standing on Myron Street in the first couple of weeks of classes, and I watched a couple with a baby in a stroller coming down the street because they could not go on the sidewalk. Okay, I have not heard anything from DOMI, I'll be honest, but I have put it into them as blocked sidewalks. Kathy?
Good evening, everybody. I have a question maybe for Chris and maybe a comment for Pitt as you move forward in your educational program. I assume that student tenants, like everyone else, are eligible to get the text from the city. I get a text every week that says, put your trash out. And it reminds you when recycling week is. And perhaps as part of an educational program, you could have students sign up for that. I mean, I understand they're very busy and the last thing they're thinking about is what day to put their trash out. But I mean, the text is from the city is pretty helpful, even for me. And I've been putting the trash out in the same day forever. So I don't know, Chris, I assume off-campus students are eligible for that. Is that true?
I believe they would be. PGH.Street is weirdly enough not actually a city service. It's somebody who saw that we were doing such a poor job out of the city that they said, I have to do this on my own. And he created it out of the goodness of his heart. And we thank him for that. We work closely with the person who created that and maintains it. And I do think that if there was more outreach with that, to get students signed up so that they knew when their recycling days and trash days were. But as it is, it's just run a single guy as a nonprofit. He did it in his own time. We do want to better utilize a system like that, and that would probably mean looking to buy an actual software that would allow us to run it and scale up significantly rather than the guy running it out of his computer, his home for the good of all. But yeah, I think when we do go to look for that software need that we're going to eventually need to take over that ourselves, having students auto enroll in that sort of thing would be very helpful.
Well, what is the potential for Pitt actually creating their own PGH.Street app?
Yeah, PGH.Street was actually, it was one of those, it was made in a code-a-thon, if you've ever heard of those, where you just, it was an impromptu kind of thing. So the city has had a lot of issues before with these kind of one-off makes. You get students to make it or something like that, and that's really great and it works, and then everyone moves on, and then who's maintaining that program, right? So we do want something a little bit more off the shelf that has kind of a help center attached to it and things like that, and that's where software needs are now.
Well, but what I'm asking is, why can't the university take that on? Because, you know, I think it would benefit the students. It would definitely benefit the community. And that could be something that's introduced during your, you know, I don't know what you call those intro days, freshman week, whatever they're calling it nowadays. You know, I know that they use the messaging alert system. So I'm going to assume you already have a fairly good database of phone numbers for text messages. You've got half the battle there.
I think if it comes to a city service, we would probably defer to the application of choice by the city, right? Because there are days where it's a holiday and so your day changes, and sometimes staffing changes make it so that the city has to communicate with folks just in time. I don't think that a niche sort of University of Pittsburgh offered application that serves as an intermediary between a city service and our students would be worth the serious time and monetary investment. So we have previously actually encouraged our students to use pgh.st, and we have been successful. I will say, right, we're in transition sort of out of our pandemic protocols and years. And so we are revamping our student guide, but we'll be sure to make that prominent because the service is still active and super helpful. I would take it back to the team, but I don't think that we would want to get into the business of sort of wanting to develop a specialized remind app for our off-campus population. We're just starting to be able to get our addresses, but are nowhere near 100% at this point.
Well, and it might change with, and I don't know the specifics, Chris could speak to it, but, you know, we have students all over the city. So the students in Lawrenceville, are they going to have access to the same service? And so it might as well be citywide with folks like Chris. that's just my thought. I'm not
That's
naysaying it, but
yeah.
But
Elena?
in the interim, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have PGH.street that is effective and it's simple, and boom, put your trash out tomorrow.
Elena, you have a question?
Hi, I'm Elena. From Oak Cliff. I want to go back to the PIT meetings with off-campus students. This year, they were very passive. It was just people at tables. It was poorly attended. In the past, it was more active with a panel discussion with a lawyer, someone from OPDC, someone from PLI, someone from the police, you know, and so on. So I would like it to go back to being that more active and educational panel discussions. Any plans for that?
Yeah, she's talking about the renters workshop.
Yes. So the renters workshop formats are going to continue to change as we work with our students. What we heard is that the panel does not work for students that come in halfway through and completely miss the content. So students specifically asked us to offer more of a resource fair style opportunity that would allow students to sort of drop in and out as their schedules allow. What we're doing this year is switching up the time of day, the days that we're doing this. It's a moving target based on student availability, student interest, and obviously the leadership of our student government board. So there will be a panel aspect to it, but we were told by our students that it does not feel helpful to them to sit down in a chair and sort of be talked at for an hour and a half and then ask questions for the last half hour that we did previously. It just loses a lot of students. Students leave in the middle, and we want to be able to be flexible. As flexible as possible.
Okay, thanks. I do have another question about, I don't remember who was talking about it, about having students, you know, student leadership in the neighborhoods. Pre-pandemic, there was talk of neighborhood RAs, not, you know, RAs, but acting, you know, like RAs. That could help now with trash education and responsible hosting, you know, mostly at the beginning of the semesters. So where, you know,
we have good news on that front. So we are
Excellent.
moving very quickly towards launching a paid student leadership position that would be responsible for engaging our off-campus students, specifically around neighborhood quality, pride of place, trash, right, upkeep, understanding their rights and responsibilities, but also building community. So as we're able to get those students onboarded, they will be joining our team and Steve Anderson in the neighborhood association meetings so that everybody has a chance to meet them, offer them some feedback as they get onboarded. But it is something that we've got the green light to run full speed ahead with. So we're hoping to do some hiring. Sorry, we're at Mimi's house. We are going to be hiring soon, and we'll have a full cohort of students to work with and really dig into this issue.
That sounds like a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Do you have any kind of timeline on that? And how many students are you planning on hiring?
We're planning on hiring about 20 students or so. And our timeline is as soon as possible. So I believe that they're posted. Steve, Justin, correct me if I'm wrong, that the student position is actually posted. We're still tweaking the program design a little bit. But this is something that will be, you know, we'll have students hired and launched here in the fall semester.
Great.
I'm sorry, I missed what that program was. Is this the program that you guys, I think, had some time ago, where students went around the neighborhood and just talked to other students?
So we'll be a little.
Yeah, so it's a shift on that off-campus ambassador model that was mostly focused on sort of health and safety messages while we were sort of navigating the beginning of the pandemic. And now we're sort of shifting towards neighborhood quality, all of the things that off-campus students need to know and understand in a neighborhood with long-term residents, and also community building.
Thank you.
Okay, will you be bringing in people from like like myself from OPDC, from DPW, from environmental services? There's just a lot of community partners involved in, particularly in recycling, because that's something that, I think we really want to push going forward. The more we recycle, the less trash we have, which is the way to go. The direction you want to head in. Is that something that'll be promoted with these guys?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely going to be a place for partners in it. We don't want to overwhelm the students as we launch, but they are going to be having weekly opportunities to train, to check in. They'll be doing community rounds and actually sort of walking around the neighborhood, paying attention to the types of things that go to 311, the types of issues that they bring back and elevate to our team or to the city. So there definitely will be a place for partners there as we get trained up and get them ready to go.
I was hoping, Bob, if you could maybe update us a bit on what is going on with quality of life ticketing. We've got any kind of movement there, or how we're doing?
Sure, yeah. I don't know if I've talked to a lot of this group about this, but Chris Mitchell and myself have been working throughout the summer to look at what the possibilities might be to actually cite residents for trash violations on the first offense, instead of having to go through our long belabored violation process that we know that isn't effective, and our environmental services workers don't really want to go through, because it takes them off of a truck for an exceptional period of time. Our office has been looking at the possibility, which many other cities have adopted, of what it would look like to actually have a known violation. Here's a ticket, very similar to a parking citation, where you would argue your, if you believe you received the ticket incorrectly, you would argue that in court after the fact, instead of waiting for 3 trips through of an environmental service worker to actually end up going to court and actually paying a fine. Right now, I think the last update that we've had was that our legal department is looking at the at what definitions we really need to have. It's a little bit different than the definitions that we've used in the past to define rubbish, but we have to come up with very specific definitions of what that includes. But we've heard pretty much overwhelmingly from community groups that this is something that they would like to see, and I've heard from the environmental service workers that we go to court with that this is something they would like to see, because they are tired of someone after a second violation, or maybe a third violation, resolving an issue and then going in front of the judge and not actually changing behavior. So the hope is that with a small fine, we'll be able to correct behavior pretty quickly though.
And there's one thing to clarify with environmental services and DPW, that is trash that occurs on the sidewalk or street. If it is in somebody's front yard or on private property, that is a PLI concern. Okay, so when you send your things into 311, some goes to PLI and other things go to DPW. Okay, because even I was getting a little confused with some of these there. So, and
one of our hopes, and Chris can probably talk about the gold plan, But one of our hopes is to actually simplify that process as environmental services starts bulking up their staff there. The hope is really that we can simplify who actually gets trash issues, who actually gets weeds issues, because right now there's definitely some gray area that would be better defined in the future here for our city services kind of internally, who's seeing things, making sure we're not running into double jeopardy, and having environmental services cite for the same thing that PLI cites, and then you have 2 cases and 2 days in court there. So
Katie, I see you've got your hand up.
Hi, can you hear me correctly? Is everything
Yes.
Okay, I just have a question about the violations. Who would be receiving the violations? Because I know we look at trash. Is it just like a student issue, a landlord issue, like university city issue? So how would you, like, who would receive the violations?
yeah, so that's a great question, Katie, and it's very similar to the beginning of our discussion here. If that landlord-tenant agreement is in place, then the tenant knows it is their responsibilities to manage the trash. If that agreement is not in place, then it's the tenant's it's the landlord's responsibility to maintain the trash, and the violation would go to the landlord and not the tenant in that situation. So it's hopefully another incentive to move all of the landlords into compliance with Code 719 and get them on this landlord-tenant agreement in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Chris, one other thing that's come up from a lot of residents in my wanderings is the possibility, need, and deep desire for weekly recycling. We have a lot of cans and a lot of bottles and a lot of cardboard in Oakland, not on a bi-weekly basis, it's on a weekly basis. And this is just something, for 5 years now, I've heard that, please, can we get weekly? Please, can we get weekly? Is this something that could possibly come from the city?
I actually just saw Amaye's hand raised a second ago.
So.
She was here, so she can answer it better than me.
Where'd she go to? Moye, are you up? Yes.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry. I hope you guys are well. I'm not going to be on camera, but yeah. So one of our issues is that, we have a kind of a triple whammy. We have infrastructure issues. We've got personnel issues, just issues of capacity. But yes, our dream is to, make that move to weekly at some point, hopefully in the next couple of years or so, but we have a lot of hurdles in our way. So yeah, there's the dream, but we just have a lot that needs to be queued up in order for us to make that switch, because we have half the amount of recycling trucks that we do refuse trucks. And, in the perfect world, it'd be weekly recycling and bi-weekly refuse collection. And then also some sort of component of composting. We're working with our sustainability office to, try to work out that sort of planning. And also there's a lot of grants that are in the works with the EPA as part of the Build Back Better plan. So there's a lot of opportunity. We just need to make sure that we kind of make those right moves to make them happen. We're doing a massive hiring spree, but the work's hard, and there's also other hurdles in that place as well. So yes, we would like to have weekly recycling as well. And I want to introduce myself. My name is Amaye Akreli. I'm recycling specialist for the city of Pittsburgh. But yeah, that's the simple way. It's the dream is there. It's just a lot of hurdles in the way.
Okay, Kathy, you have your hand up again.
I do. I have a quick question about recycling, particularly, after party events, and we want people to recycle. Is there some policy in place, like what we have bins now? What if you have more recycling than fits in a bin? What is the, I guess, the process? Because, You know, we have lots of bottles and cans after parties, but they don't all fit in one bin.
Totally. We do currently, while we are trying to move away, let me step back. While we're trying to move away from the plastic bag by going bag free by 2023, we understand that a lot of people realize that they have more recycling than they have, cans for it. We are currently accepting bags, recyclables, but they have to be the larger 35 gallon or the larger, I don't know, the 35 gallon bags. Though we would like people to understand that the investment in a sturdy container pays for itself, you know, rather than buying, you know, Glad bags or what have you. But, you know, for landlords, you know, it's part of the, you know, if they hop on with the you know, getting the landlord tenant agreement put together, we can possibly offer them larger recycling cans. We do have a couple of 96-gallon recycling cans, but we just need to make sure that the tenants and the landlord understand that, you know, we only want the good stuff going into the recycling bin rather than, you know, loads of contamination and misuse.
Did you say 96 gallon?
A 96-gallon container, you might have seen them around there on wheels, and they have a flip top.
Who gets them? Because they won't take anything else bigger than 32.
Yeah, so part of the city code is that if it's a city issued container, we will service it. Okay. So that leaves it open for us to, you know, we know what kind of container that we are offering and it fits our trucks. But anything that is purchased by an individual or a tenant landlord has to be 35 gallons or less.
And I'd like to just add to that we do have several recycling drop-off locations throughout the city. One here at Environmental Services in the Strip District, where you can bring your bulk cans and glass and things like that that you have left over from a party. You can bring them and drop them in our dumpsters for recycling at several different locations anytime, open 24 hours a day.
But the thing is, Chris, we're trying to encourage the students living off campus to not bring their cars. And it'd be kind of tough getting down to the Strip District on a PRT bus. What is the possibility for the city to locate big bellies, I think they're called, that are solar operated in the Oakland community? Or, I mean, there's a variety of means of collection, but we need something that's in the community, that's close on hand for the students. They aren't the type to be taking things to a recycling center, I'm afraid.
Totally. I agree with that statement, Liz. We want to have people, you know, using less individualized transportation, especially in Oakland. As long as we can find a location, I think, then we'll have to find the money. So there's like multiple steps to that. But and we know that Oakland is strapped for space. So if we can find a location where there's some sort of agreement worked out, where, someone's also monitoring the location, and I think there's a lot of potential there. I'll just end that there.
This question is probably for Chris or Moya. This is, actually me asking as a resident, but also somebody who wants to educate the students. As we're talking about, cans after parties or things like that, something like, just empty can now into the trash, something like that would end up contaminating the recycling, correct? They'd have to rinse and dry and do those type of things for it to be appropriately recycled, or would that just be able to be recycled as is?
I mean, ideally, we would like for things to be rinsed before they're tossed into the can, but, practically, honestly, when I drink stuff, sometimes it's empty, and, whatever residue whatever was liquid will probably dry up through, to evaporation, right? So for like drinks and stuff like that, yes, but we also know realistically that it's not possible for every can to be rinsed. So peanut butter jars, on the other hand, or things that actually have that thick food residue. Yeah, the food contamination is what we're mostly concerned about. You know, ideally, if you're using there's like a 2-liter bottle, no lids. So any liquids that might be in there will fall out, and you know it would be easily compacted. Yeah, so like most of the rules as far as food residue, it's mostly geared towards food residue. But we do want the bottles and cans to be emptied. But we know we can only get so far with that advice.
Yeah, so like if there's 50 cans all with sort of liquid residue on them, that's still going to be okay in that case.
Well, we can't. We have it written in our literature. You know, cans emptied and washed. So we right. Try, but you know, yes, I mean, but no one's going to really inspect it unless it's like water's in the bottom of the can and maybe there's mosquitoes involved. You know, it's like things much further after that. So,
well, trust me, I'm not telling anybody in my household you don't have to rinse the cans before we recycle them, because then we're going to end up with, you know, all that is all the unrinsed cans. So that I get you, no problem. Thank you.
In large events, they're not mandating people to rinse cans and bottles before they put them into recycling. At any of our stadiums or ballparks, that's, you know, they've got the recycling bin. You put your can in there, you put your bottle.
That's true. That is true.
I have been remiss. Mr. Anderson, Steve, if you'd like to introduce yourself, because Jamie mentioned you earlier. I'm sorry, I should have introduced you earlier.
Liz, I am golden. I appreciate it. Everybody got to see Shane Zoom crash the call, so I really apologize for that. But thanks, Liz. I work with Justin, Jamie, Gabby, Matt, Brad, I think's on here. But I work in student affairs at the University of Pittsburgh. We are working, I think some folks know this, but we're working to develop student facing. I work with Trisha. Trisha's there. She was helping out, but working to develop a office student facing to support our off-campus students within student affairs. So I look forward to continue working with many of you. And if I can do anything, by all means, let us know. Jamie mentioned our community ambassadors that Justin and Gabby were out advertising, recruiting for. We're working with our HR system to post, and our goal is to get them up and running this semester. And then, you know, we got to build this slowly. Hopefully, if there's suggestions and ideas, please let us know. And I'll turn it back over to you, Liz, but thanks for the opportunity.
Okay, Steve, thank you. Phyllis, I see you have your hand up.
This is a question that actually follows from what was just being said. At orientation, does Pitt have a separate orientation for off-campus students that's required, that would go over, you know, basic how to be a good neighbor stuff? You may do this, but you know, at home they wouldn't throw their stuff all over the ground, right? I mean, it just wouldn't happen, I don't think. These are pretty smart kids. These are kids that have worked hard to get to Pitt. And if that message were really very strong at all the orientations, and maybe at a separate one for off-campus students. Do you have a separate one?
So Phyllis, what I would tell you is, of our new first year students, 97 some odd % of them live on campus.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes. And we don't have a live on requirement. So they are choosing to live on campus. And so for that, there's not really per se an orientation to live off campus, except for the opportunities and the programs that we try to introduce our students to, that Justin mentioned, and Justin, Jamie, Student Government Board. I know our SGB president is on here. Matt works on this. We're really trying to provide our students with education about what does it mean to live in community, what are the rights and responsibilities that they have, and happy to pass it over to anybody else from Pitt that might have some info about those things.
Yeah, and I'll just say, just to add on what Steve is saying, you know, we are just trying to figure out, you know, what's going to meet the needs of students, because you sort of asked that question, Phyllis, of, you know, the required piece. And so that, I wouldn't say that's necessarily required. We do have these opportunities that are available for the students that are supported in multiple different areas of the institution. And so we have this, you know, one of the students that's on here right now is helping in the planning of those tenant town halls in order to, you know, sort of provide some of that information for us off-campus students and the folks living in our communities. So again, we're trying to develop those and strengthen those and make those the best we can and meet the needs of the students and their understanding. To your point, like, you know, if we feel like they should know that sort of thing is something they should be doing, and so we just need to be able to reinforce that, and we're just trying to find out the best ways to do so.
And Justin, if I could, Liz, you gave me the opportunity, and I think another one of our students on here, Katie, that is our community and government relations chair for student government board. So again, a lot of our students and our staff are committed and care about the community and are working to try to identify how we can best serve and meet the needs that are being talked about here.
Okay.
Yeah, if I can add from the student perspective. As Steve said, I am Kate Fitzpatrick. I'm the student governmental relation. My goodness, I combined the names. I'm the community government relations chair for student government board this year. And on the student side, we are very concerned about the trash in Oakland. Aside from, long-term residents, it is our home for however many months that we do live in Oakland. So it's something, at least on my end, that I do want to help resolve. The 10 town halls, as Justin mentioned, are a fantastic opportunity for students to come and really learn about how to live off campus and to provide resources. So, we are working on the student side to try to resolve this issue and educate students about the proper way to live off campus and to really make sure that they're respecting the neighborhood.
Thanks, Katie. Okay. Does anybody else from the neighborhood have any questions or comments? Did I miss anybody?
I can't get to my raise hand thing fast enough, but yeah. So at least one thing to say too, like even the kids that live in the dorms, and I think that you guys do some of this, but maybe a little bit more emphatic to them as far as like what seems to happen. I've actually had one kid throw a brick through my window after telling me that he's a Pitt student in Oakland, and he can do whatever he wants. Even the kids that live in the dorms, perhaps some expressing some expectation that when they go to parties here, even if they themselves don't live here, that they're still expected to act like adults and human beings and conduct themselves properly. So that they maybe at somebody's party and the garbage is bad, like, hey, maybe say something there that to help clean them up. I think that's what Katie was saying too, as far as some of the students that live here aren't necessarily more proactive in trying to make that happen. They kind of sit back, similar to like parties. Like I've talked to more than a few. They're like, oh yeah, they can't stand loud parties either. But I just asked them, do you call 911 to have them broken up? They're like, well, no. Like if you don't, nothing's gonna happen. If you're not calling, don't expect that anybody else is gonna call.
Yeah, Mark, I would say, and I'd want to pass this over to Matt maybe for his commentary, but I would also assure you that our students are held to the student code of conduct on and off campus. And so now we can't be a student. We have 30,000 students, but if we know who the student is and they have their rights to their hearing procedure, but the code of conduct applies on and off campus. Matt, anything you would want to say to that?
I think that simply it is reinforced during welcome week multiple times, even within small groups in the residential communities. Whenever they're having a meeting, they're reinforcing that kind of thing too. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist or minimizing it, because it happens. It surely does. I have received referrals from police for some of those incidents about, and then they whipped a bottle into somebody's yard. Somebody was cited for scattering rubbish at one point because they were A, intoxicated, but B, picked up a trash can and threw it out, dumped all the contents out. They went through our process, and there's not much to do at that point. And depending on the level for them to defend themselves, right? They were witness, the cameras are on for police. So we do manage that kind of behavior for sure whenever that's reported to us.
Millie?
Yeah, it's just, and I appreciate that. And like I said, I kind of know that you guys talked to them about it, but it is still a little frustrating. And I haven't heard it exactly in a little while, but the fact that there are kids that think that, like, who told you that you're a Pitt student, you live in Oakland, you can do anything you want? So that mindset came from somewhere. It's obviously not written down anywhere, but it seems to be, it continues.
Yeah, and we do have it in the code. Yeah, it is in writing to that degree now. How many students read the code, right? Something that we're working on as well, and doing that kind of assessment to say, okay, well, if it's 85% of the students, who are those 85%? Are they folks who are going out into are they already living in the community? So yes, teasing all of that out for sure. So thank you, Mark, for that. I appreciate it.
I just wanted to, sorry, Liz, if it's okay to add on, I just want to say that, like, like Matt's talking about, not sure if they read the conduct, and even Chris said earlier was talking about sort of, that we have this form that we give them, but whether or not that goes, whether or not they comply by that form in the city is something too, and that's, so we like, so I want to mention, like, Steve and I and Gabby and other folks in the room have gone out and have walked the streets earlier this semester and have met our students to connect with the students on an evening when they are out and about, and so and give them information on be a good neighbor. So it's not just the messaging that happens deep in the code of conduct. It's things that we're giving them directly, and sometimes they embrace it and they're like, oh, thanks, because we're bringing them other stuff too, and they're loving it, and so we got to make sure that we know what we are out there promoting that messaging, not just within the bellies of our documents, but something that we are actively promoting is to be a good neighbor. So
okay, before we wrap up Let's Talk, I'd like to give Millie a minute, and then after Millie, we're going to be rolling over to Oak Watch, where the discussion really is more targeted towards student conduct, as we turn into a new school year. So Millie. Here
I am. I'm unmuted now. I have one comment, and I will agree with what Mark is saying, because I sometimes work up the nerve to talk to my neighbor students who constantly have overflowing rubbish cans, but I am hesitant to do it because what they say to me is, "We're students. What do you expect?" And that's really disappointing. As a neighbor who cleans the sidewalk and has picked up their trash numerous times, and it's always overflowing, and they, anyway, that's one comment. The other question I have, I guess, is for Bob. One time I was cited for having a mattress in front of my house because some students were moving out. And we know this happens. When they're moving out, they have so much stuff, they just dump it on the sidewalk, in spite of all the wonderful efforts to try to recycle stuff. And so we know that TVs get thrown out that way. And I've had TVs in front of my house, and it becomes my problem when it's in front of my house, unless it gets legs and it walks onto in front of somebody else's house. So how I guess, how is this? That's going to be a problem that you're always going to have, Bob. That's all I wanted to say. That if it's not my rubbish, there's nothing on that mattress that identifies it as mine or my neighbor's, but it's sitting in front of my house, so it becomes my problem, and I get cited for it. And it was for putting it out early. And I was like, well, at least they put it out. I was happy they put it out, but they put it out in front of my house. Yep. And I get cited. Yeah. And I had to take my day and go down to in front of Riccardi, and yeah, it was written off, and I didn't pay anything, but yeah, it was a waste of a morning or an afternoon for me, and yeah.
Well,
so that's
Millie,
have to be aware
one
of.
thing that is interesting is, when did that happen?
It was not this past year. Oh gee. My handyman was, my handyman's passed away. It was while he was still, I mean, I don't remember when it was.
The reason I ask is because our system shouldn't work like that. Right now, our system would require 3 different citations before you actually have to go in front of Judge Riccardi. And that's what we're trying to avoid.
Yeah, I don't know why it happened so quickly.
Yeah.
I don't remember why, but all of a sudden there I was, down in front of Riccardi.
Unless Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, unless DPW wrote a citation.
Oh, they might have.
That might have come from environmental services if it was a curbside
okay.
put out violation.
Oh, right,
so
right. It might
Yeah.
have done that because every once in a while they slap on it if the garbage is too big, if it's too heavy. Yeah, she could be right because it happened right away.
Okay, guys, we're gonna have to wrap this up now so that we can move on to the second half of the evening. And your MC for that part is Miss Wanda Wilson. So I will say goodnight. I'm gonna hang around, okay? But Wanda, you're taking over.
Okay.